was growing up in a small village called Kabile in northwest Somalia, and not Somaliland. He's the Somalilander, I'm the Somali. You know, people can disagree intellectually, but still remain to be brothers and fellow citizens. We don't have to kill one another. Okay?
I don't care.
And so when I was growing up in that village,
waa markii garxajiska annaga waadamaad garan aan cabdi kan write books on muqdisho iyo waa markii habadgidista waa markii mareexaanka waa markii this and that marka aniga annaga
Abiy,
if you like it
okay?
those three
I'm an MP in Mogadishu.
intaan wax kala
Boy, do I know this. Okay? And Ahmed can speak about Hargeisa. Okay? Traditional leaders became paid agents of the colonial state, the cog in the colonial wheel, if you like. And the second group was small in number, where some religious leaders became Qadi court judges, school teachers to give the colonial project a... And so when I was growing up in that village, as kids, you know, we were always hungry. When you are growing up in your late early years and then teens, you know, you want to eat all the time, and there wasn't enough food all the time, as in most parts of the country. And so we used to go to the dry river, where there was sort of a wild fruits called gub, or magub. And so we'll eat that gub. But there was one tree which was taller than all the trees in the village and in the district for that matter. It was called warmalaliye. Warmalaliye in English will mean sort of a javelin throwing. So the adults used to come to this place and to see who was the best javelin thrower if they can throw that javelin over the tree. In that sense, ayaa is warmalaliye. He stands tall among us. And so we are exceptionally grateful to you, Ayaa. So let me move into the subject, and I will be relatively brief. Most of the stuff will be on slides, so you can partly read if you want to. How do people become a nation? Somali ummad baan nahay ayaa la dhahaa. Somali say we are a nation. But how did we become one? Okay? There were no nation states in Africa. There were no nation states in the world at a certain point. And these have to be constructed. Okay? So for Somalis, tradition and language are the core ideas to the making of a nation. Tonight I'm going to say yes, but no. They are not. If you go to Kenya, if you go to South Africa, people speak different languages and they have different cultures, and so they happen to be a nation nonetheless. And so it's not culture and language. And you can look at the history of Europe and see the same thing. I'm an MP in Mogadishu, and boy, do I know this. Okay? And Ahmed can speak about Hargeisa. Okay? Traditional leaders became paid agents of the colonial state, the cog in the colonial wheel, if you like. And the second group was small in number, where some religious leaders became Qadi court judges, school teachers to give the colonial project a sort of, if you like, a cultural and Islamic hue to legitimate it. Okay. But with the perishing of Muhammad Abdullah Hassan for almost 20 years, 2 decades, from 1920 to almost to 1940, there was doldrums in the Somali world. There was no movement, resistance to the colonial project. Maybe in the form of silent resistance, but not certainly organized manner in that sense. But it was the Second World War that will create, if you like, the piston that will crack the Somali culture and begin to think of themselves as a nation, imagining, okay, it didn't exist before. And so it's during the war, as the Italian Somaliland was captured by the British, as British Somaliland was captured by the Italians before the British came again, those movements generated resistance in ways that Mohammed Abdullah Hassan and his colleagues did not think about at that point in time. So people will come together from all of the Somali colonies, 5 colonies, to Mogadishu to begin to agitate. And they are looking at what's happening in the rest of the world. It's at this point that the birth of what's called Somali nationalism takes root. It's right here. Okay. Consequently, Mogadishu will become the hub because of the United Nations. So people will come from Diridawa and Jigjiga. There was SYL in Diridawa. There was SYL in Jigjiga. There was SYL in Wajir. There was SNL in Hargeisa and in Bur'o, and so on and so forth, and USP. Okay, I'm moving fast. I see you. Okay. So 2 political factions after SYL and all of these things happens in the 1950s. A section that's sectarian in orientation and says, I want to be close to the British, I want to be close to the Italians, and I want to be this and this and that. Self-gratifying for themselves, and then dividing the nation as the British and the Italians and everybody else did. Okay? And then there is a civic group that says, we are all together here, and we want to imagine a new way of being Somali, a national Somali. But the Italians try to create tribal provinces, just like they have tribal provinces in Somalia today. Okay, Abdullahi Isa writes about that at the United Nations. Okay, liberation comes. This is what the map becomes. Think about the Somali Republic. The Constitution says, the first article of the Republican Constitution in 1960 says the following. Somalia is an independent and fully sovereign state. It's a representative, democratic, and unitary state. The Somali people are one and indivisible. So unlike Mohammed Abdullah Hassan, which sort of germinated the seeds at the beginning, here we are talking about a national state, common citizenship, and so on and so forth, what the American sort of a liberation movement did, what the bourgeois did here. Okay? So a new imagination is coming to bear. Okay? Think about what this little boy is thinking about in Mogadishu. Even today, this is a very recent picture. What is he imagining? Who does he belong to? He doesn't have a tribal flag. He doesn't have a religious flag. He has a flag with a 5-pointed star. Okay? Mohammed Awal Liban, the inventor. Okay? Then democracy happens in Somalia, and there are 7 benchmarks, and I will conclude in a minute. Yeah, 5 minutes, that's great. Okay, you can read this, but there are 2 parts to this. When the country became a republic, there was a new constitution, British Somaliland and Italian Somaliland come together. There was no negotiation. There was no hustling. There was no haggling. I want this, put this one in the constitution for me. It was, everybody was willing to go along. They were new imagination, okay? Unlike what's happening in the South today, unlike what's happening in the North today, okay? But it's really the middle of that period in the 1960s with the local government elections of 1963, and then the presidential elections of 1967, and then the parliamentary elections of 1969. That's when the fracturing begins to take place. The 2 factions of the elite that we were talking about begins to take place. And then I have a document produced in 1969, early in 1969, from the Somali government, where all quote-unquote tribal leaders were brought from all over the country, okay? And they were told by the government, do our bidding in your communities. Let your communities come together, your clans come together, and vote as one for us. This is really the beginning of the germination of the 4.5 formula was in 1969. Okay? Take note. And then, of course, political tribalism begins to mushroom. Corruption begins to mushroom, which ultimately and unfortunately led to the demise and the killing of our president, Mr. Sharmak, in 1969. The military takes over. You know that story, many of you. The turning point was really the Somali-Ethiopian War. Tyranny and tribalization of the military itself. Mohammed Ali Samatra, the commanding general, told us in an interview in Minneapolis about, 2004 or thereabouts. That's exactly what happened, he said, the tribalization of the military. And then counter forces who were tribalistic in nature, S&M, sort of SSDF, USC, they all begin to mushroom. It wasn't people who were saying, we want to go and kill the Majertans, we want to go and kill the Isaks, we want to go and kill this and that. Okay? It was cooked from the top, not from the bottom. So if it was cultural, it should have emanated from here. Okay? That's where the leadership question takes place. And then, of course, the demise we are aware of. So the engineering of the calamity from the top started in the demise of Hargeisa, the killing of Hargeisa and Bur'o. Well, that's where it began.
Now, this paper then is part of a book or series of essays that we hope will come out in the near future. In that trust question, and I brought some copies if you're interested in this, we examined 4 institutions: culture, religion, politics, and public institutions. And the argument is that in all 4, the actors in the drama in culture, odayaasha waxa la yidhaaho, the actors in religion, wadaadada waxa la yidhaaho, the actors in politics, the political class, and then the public institutions, the administrative structure of the state, all of them, trust has evaporated. So none of them really works in a way that will build those societies. For the first time in a long time, I'm going to read what we have written and it's barely 3-4 pages. So we should be able to finish this quickly. So please maybe pay attention. The conclusion of the essay, it's a long essay, is that wretchedness and an effort to assuage it is the permanent drama that preoccupies most Somalis. I don't care where you are among the Somali community. Since the destruction of the Somali institutions that Abdi has spoken about, the Somali demos has all the characteristics of in itself, that Hegelian Marxist, in itself, but hardly any necessary awakening for itself. Way jirtaa, in itself. Lakin iskuma hadli karto. It cannot speak for itself. It is already 4 decades since the fatal decline and consequent evisceration of the dictatorship. In the morrow of the repressive misrule of Mohammed Siad Barre's regime, the elite has cooked depraved Somali habits grounded in personal self-aggrandizing and instrumentalist calculations, are part of the spirit that Abdi's evidence speaks to. Rather than seize opportunities to hold together in a mutually benefiting manner and the pursuit of their own interest, legitimate interest, and the imperatives of national unity, institutional integrity, and socio-economic well-being. The Somali elites in all places have transformed themselves into potentially what we call diseased political souls. The condition includes constant scheming to create discord, thus exploiting one another's vulnerability has become the defining feature of the elite in the defunct republic. If such is the main dialectic of experience, this question then arises. Can Somalis reinvent a common fidelity to a resurrective political community? Any genuine effort towards that goal would have to take intelligent cognizance of the unavoidable transition from this moment to some other place, the transition. And no one speaks better to that than when a great social scientist, who for some time was, I think, the director of the London School of Economics, German professor by the name of Ralph Dandorf. He offers a sober reflection on the making of a society. And he writes, and I quote, "The clock of transition, the clock of transition runs at 3 paces, 3 paces. The hour of the lawyer is the shortest. Legal challenge may be enacted in months. You can go to parliament and say, okay, We change this, vote, done. The second one of the transition is the hour of the economist. And it's longer, a little bit longer. Why? Because dismantling and establishing functioning markets sometimes takes years. But the longest one, and this is the big one for us, I think, as Somalis, the longest one is the hour of the citizen, he says. That is to say, transforming ingrained habits, mental attitudes, and cultural codes, self-value systems, pervasive discourses. This, he says, Darun Raf, may take the hour of the citizen, may take decades, and presents the greatest challenge. End of quote. Now, Somalis now then locked into this kind of a critical crisis. The question then is there any way in which they can pick up the pieces, if not this generation, the generations to come, pick up the pieces so that they're able to create an agreement easily understood by the larger society, even in the face of various historical deprivations. Our argument, therefore, is, and this is the concluding segment of the paper, is that saddex kelmadood of Somalia, 3 Somali words. And they're not just words, they are really concepts. Yeah? All concepts are words, but not all concepts, not all words are concepts. Yeah? All concepts are words. Yeah, whether it's Somali or English or German or Russian or Swahili, Arabic, all concepts are words, but not all words are concepts. The difference is that concepts, even though they are words, are pregnant with meaning, big time meaning. So 3 Somali concepts would have to be haddii la baabin kari waayo, because there are some places where they are useful. They have to be played down. Whether you are in Hargeisa or Bur'o or in Barava or Kismayo or in Mogadishu, you have to break it down. Saddexda in meel la iska dhigo, amba hoos loo dhigo. What are those 3? Aniga. Me. Aniga. Talabaad. Annaga. Annaga. You can all see the boundaries. Annaga. Yeah. Iyaga. Others. Iyaga. Kuwa. Iyaga. Those 3 concepts would have to be dealt with, and they would have to be tamed and played as low and as infrequent as possible. I don't care whether you are in. I saw it in Hargeisa. Waa markii garxajiska. Annaga. And Abdi can write books on Mogadishu, waa markii habad gidista. Waa markii mareexaanka, waa markii this and that. Marka aniga, annaga, iyaga, those 3 will have to be dealt with. Intaan wax kalaba loo gelin, dhaqaale la dhiso iyo building economy and things like that. Yeah, just the language and this minimum consciousness would have to be dealt with. Maxaa lagu bedeli marka? What's the change? If this project is to create just civil discourses, yeah, what would have to be done on some kind of a strong national solidarity? Aniga, let me just explain that a little bit. Yeah. As I said before, me first. As it is most innocent, it's a legitimate, up to a certain point, legitimate way to bring attention to oneself. In the
idea of
Hegelian
imagined,
sense,
as the last 2 or 3 statements Ahmed made at the conclusion of the paper, is that the national question does not emanate from the grassroots. I mean, that's the beginning of what I started with. It doesn't start from the grassroots. It's conjured, cultivated, invented, and then constructed by the elite. But that elite, there are two ways to think about the elite. One is to think of the elite as folks who are engaged in a zero-sum game. Aniga, yaka, innaga. Zero-sum game. Hadka hadii la dhaafo, let them go to hell. Okay? Or are they engaged in a positive sum game? So whether it's in Hargeisa or in Mogadishu, the republic we were talking about, okay? Because the national project led to the creation of the republic. The other three were still missing, okay? And so the question becomes, what screwed that royally? What screwed that? Was it the folks from Gabile and Hargeisa and Bur'o and Ergavo and Jalalaqsi and Beledweyne and Boghlaburde and Kismaya who said, let's tear each other apart? Let me just answer that question very briefly. I did a bit of work in Johar just before the collapse in 1990, the spring of 1990. And then I did an earlier work when I was doing my PhD in Gabile, outside Gabile, talking to a farmer in Johar and a farmer in Gabile. It's the same question. And they virtually gave me the same answer, although they didn't know of one another. And they said, Adeer, yeah, caloolweynta Hargeysa iyo Muqdisho ayaa intay balaayada soo kariyaan iyay hambadan lagu soo daadiyaan. Literally. Dabeedna hambada ayaan ku sumowna. I'll translate. Said, the folks, the big stomach folks in Mogadishu, and they were big stomachs, I'm telling you, with tiny legs. Okay? They cooked the filth in Mogadishu and in Hargeisa. Okay? Primarily they were talking about Mogadishu because Hargeisa was already devastated by that time. Okay? And then after they sort of indulge in themselves, and that's why they become Wabanzis. Okay? Then they throw the leftover poison to us, and then through that we get sick. So the imagined is the elite. Okay? If you go to Hargeisa, and I haven't been to Hargeisa because these two of them will put me in prison. Okay?
And the same thing for the Zone 5 folks. Where are they? So my perspective on this, and I don't think Abdi and I are different on this, is that the guilt is shared by all. Is shared by all. To this day, I remember when I was a member of parliament, I was one of the people, I was chairing, in fact, the group that were bent on replacing Sharif Ahmed as a president of Somalia. I was chairing that group. Hassan Sheikh was my deputy. Yeah, and I remember saying to them in the conversation, they were about what they call the 8 big kind of a group, Hassan Sheikh, Farmajo, myself, people like that, Badiye, people like that. And I remember saying to them, that when Hassan won the elections, we pulled our votes together so that Hassan will get the vote after he became the kii noogu cod bata ayaan codka siinaynaa afarta ugu dambaysa kii noogu cod bata. Hassan was the one with the largest vote. And he was my deputy. And I remember taking him out of the part of the halkii lagu shirayay police school of police school wad garanaysa intina xamar taqaan school of police, taking him out of the conference, out at the back. We went to the back. That's the two of us. And I told him, and I said, listen, don't be a coward. Don't be a coward. Yeah. Fulaha nagu noqonin. And then he said, oh, good, no, I won't. As soon as I get won, we'll meet. So we met. And we'll make this quickly. Myself, all the other 3 are dead now. Dr. Ali Khalif Kalaid, General Jama Yere, and the 4th person, Ismail Buba, Ismail Buba. These 4 of us. Big names at that time in Mogadishu. They were bigger than I was, even though I was running for the office. And some of them were my teachers. We went to see him, Hassan. He's barely 3 or 4 days in office. We went to Villa Somali, we met him. We wrote 1-page note to him in Somali and in English, and then orally to deliver that. And what we suggested was, in order to get to this most important issue, nothing was most important than the fate of Somaliland. And that's why I went there to run for office, to hold this before it gets too late. And we said to him, Hassan, qof ra'iisul wasaare ah oo karti leh oo reer Somaliland doono, list, and we'll bring you a list of 7 or 8 people that you can choose from, and the 4 of us will not be included. We will get that for you, so that there's no self-interest. No aniga. Yeah. Ku dhawaaq. Second, I have that document. Create a panel group, maybe about 13, 14, divided halfway between Somalilanders, people from the north, and the old southern part of the republic, those 2 groups. And in fact, who are committed to the national union, but they are open-minded enough to listen to the story that is bubbling up in the north. Yeah. And they become somewhat judicious people to understand this and then bring it out. And he said, okay, I'll do it. He said, President, 2nd time now. Never did. Never did. Halkaas way ka dhumatay. My point is, marka waxa weeye waa laga gardaran yahay Somaliland markay noqoto on this issue. God has not given them the special instruction that they should be the ones who would always have to think about national union. Where are the others? And where is the elite in Mogadishu? And the reason why I left Mogadishu, because there was nobody to talk to about these issues. Nobody. Okay, and I resigned. But there's a problem for Somalilanders too, and this is my final point of the question. And that is, iyagina waxa iskugu biiray 2 things, 2 issues. And they carry those issues, it's like a big rock. Ma kici karayaan. They can't get up. One, waxa weeye a certain, I think, really bothersome of othering the Somalis from the south. Kuwaas iyaga. War meeshaas khayr male kuwa naga dhaaf. Aniga ayda mararka qaarkood caynkaas. I said myself. So I feel part of the guilt. That's a problem. Because the people are not the elite, as Abdi has said so clearly. The people aren't the elite.